EastEnders Cat, Jessie Wallace and Hollywood heartthrob Russell Crowe, plus music from The Thrills. Friday night with Jonathan Ross at 10:40 here on BBC One. First, some strong language in Have I Got News For You.
Welcome to Have I Got News For You. I'm Kirsty. In the news this week, after a record 10 years at Hendon, trainee constable Perkins once again loses concentration on the final test. Councillors in Milan regret inviting Pavarotti to be the first passenger on their new tram system. And on the final night of a European summit, Tony Blair regrets asking John Prescott to find a venue for the grand banquet. On Ian Hislop's team is a controversial novelist who says he once touched Tony Blair to get a feel of his heft, although I've felt it a couple of times and it's nothing to write home about. Please welcome Will Self. On Paul Martin's team is a former MP, government minister and prison inmate, about whom his own barrister said his fall from grace has been absolute, his public humiliation has been complete. Not quite true, as he hasn't done Graham Norton yet. Please welcome Jonathan Aitken. All right, let's get started. Round one. Ian and Will, what's going on here?
People standing up.
Ecstatic Johnny Wilkinson. Sweet Chariot, that must be the rugby lot coming home.
I think it's marvellous that we can all be proud at last, proud of celebrating an activity in which one very large man places his head between the bums of two other very large men and strains hard. I think, frankly, that's what modern Britain's all about.
Who wasn't there in the crowd to see the match?
Lots of people, lots of people. I wasn't there. Is that a sort of trick question?
Could you just be a little more specific?
Oh, Richard Cabourn, the sports minister.
Absolutely.
He wasn't there because Blair was so desperate on the Foundation Hospital vote, he thought he might lose it by 1. So this man had to come home at a cost of God knows how many hospitals.
Wasn't another minister there?
The Minister for Culture was there.
She did apparently sprint into the changing rooms after the whistle was blown.
Really?
One of the perks of the job. Who has been trying to write a poem to mark the victory?
That presumably will be the poet laureate, I assume.
And he's been trying to write football chants.
He's been trying to get somebody to be the chant laureate.
Oh, fantastic. There's
no end to his talent.
Well, there's no end to his talent, and frankly, no beginning either.
Well, no, the chant laureate apparently is going to receive a £10,000 bursary and attend football matches and compose new chants to special games. And we had The Sun, in fact, obviously, was helping everybody out this week and printed this. Newcastle fans to ex-Sunderland boss Peter Reid. It goes, "In the land where I was born lives a man with a monkey's head. And he went to Sunderland, and his name is Peter Reid. All together now, Peter Reid's got an ugly monkey's head, an ugly monkey's head, an ugly monkey's head."
It's popular verse at its best, really, isn't it?
This is the return of England's victorious rugby team. When England landed at Heathrow, first off the plane was the 18-stone hooker with a squashed nose and cauliflower ear. And behind the stewardess came the England team. Sven-Göran Eriksson said, "We wish for the same outcome when we go to the European Championships in Portugal next year, when, no doubt, Emil Heskey, proudly wearing the number 10 shirt, will boot the ball high over the bar in the last minute." Paul and Jonathan, here comes the mirror man.
Oh, that's the rogue footman placed inside the palace. There is the editor of the Daily Mirror. Oh, and there he is over there. Here's the one that works for the Daily Mirror. Ryan Parry, I think, was the journalist disguised as the footman who was in there for a couple of months. And the Daily Mirror holding their hands up and admitting all was on the eve of Bush's visit to Buckingham Palace.
What were Ryan Parry's duties?
Cleaning out the Duke of Edinburgh.
What did he tell us about Princess Anne?
She's a female centaur.
Can you be slightly more specific?
She's half woman, half horse. And there's some debate as to which half is which.
What did she recently call a footman?
A twit.
Not quite.
No, not quite. But
Shall
if
we
I said
have a
twat,
look?
you'd cut it out.
Shall we... There you are. That's what she called it.
That's Mr. incompetent twat to you.
Can I add a world exclusive on this story? As I watched that clip of, the Buckingham Palace bedrooms, I suddenly realised, having been a guest of Her Majesty myself at different levels, those chocolate biscuits and that Tupperware are equally to be found in Belmarsh Prison and in Buckingham Palace.
It was actually, I thought, it rebounded to the royal family's favour, because you looked at their accommodation, having been told it was incredibly royal and luxurious, and it was awful. The breakfast table was really sad. They had to have little Tupperware things with cornflakes in them. No, they have it at the state banquet.
Yeah.
A man comes in with a huge Tupperware. Gets out another little one with a steak in it.
You're spoiling this, Ambassador, as a huge Tupperware thing comes through. What is this? I don't know what it is, but it's fresh.
I can't think why they wanted to ban the story. It was actually rather good spin doctoring for the royal family, wasn't
Well,
it?
yes, as long as they look boring and it looks as though they're having a miserable life, they'll remain the royal family. As soon as the public suspect them of enjoying themselves, then they're out. People don't want that. They want dogs, misery, Scotland.
Amazingly, this is the first time that Her Majesty has taken out an injunction against a national newspaper. So, the Queen's message is clear. You can say, I plotted to kill Diana. You can say, Prince Charles is gay. But no one takes photos of my Tupperware cereal box. Ian and Will, allons-y.
This is Jacques Chirac delivering a marvellously chilly series of Gallic put-downs to our Prime Minister that made him look pretty small, I have to say.
I did think Chirac started well by congratulating Mr. Blair on the rugby, which he said was a victory for Europe.
So Jacques Chirac was in Britain this week for a meeting with Blair and was given this signed photo of Leo Blair. Do we know what little Leo said to Chirac when they first met a couple of years ago? He wished him happy birthday in French.
In French.
Just when I begin to mellow towards Tony Blair, you hear something insufferably pretentious about one of his children. It's completely around the bend, doesn't it?
Chirac presumably was expecting a state visit. He might get quite a nice present. A signed photo of someone's kids. I mean, usually you say to people, put it back in your wallet. I'm not interested.
What's the latest bit of Euro nonsense in terms of legislation?
Well, there's quite a lot of it around. Chirac came over to celebrate the fact that France and Germany had failed to reach their budget targets, but there's a special bit of small print, which we'd forgotten to read, in the Euro constitution, which says it doesn't apply to either France or Germany.
The other bit of Euro nonsense, which I would guess is equally important, is there's been new legislation this week governing the height of rocking horses introduced into the European Union. That the seat can be no higher than 60 centimetres off the ground.
What about antique rocking horses? Will they be destroyed in a fiendish cull? Come here, my pretties, come here.
Or just be given their freedom and let into the wild.
What a beautiful sight that will be. Thousands of antique rocking horses
Galloping across the
free.
Sussex Downs.
Yeah.
When's that going to happen?
Any time now, the legislation's been passed.
Well, it will be televised, won't it?
I would expect
when
so.
they set the rocking horses free.
I
Yes.
think so.
Yeah, there'll be a commentary by David Dimbleby, and now we see the first rocking horse.
I think David Attenborough will be out among the rocking horses, stroking one, saying, it's incredible.
Amongst the rocking horses. The majestic rock backwards and then inevitably forwards. As it backwards under.
It'll be on BBC One all night called Rocking with Horses.
This is Tony Blair's best friend, Jacques Chirac, visiting Britain. Chirac accidentally invaded the Blairs' privacy by parading a photo of 3-year-old Leo in front of photographers. Downing Street immediately contacted newspapers and asked them not to use the picture. And as if to prove their good relations with the press, it appeared only in the Mirror, the Star, and the Sun, oh, and the Mail, and the Express, the Guardian, the Telegraph, and the Times. Still, at least it hasn't been shown on TV. Paul and Jonathan, your talking shop.
Oh, this is the familiar state opening of Parliament, and that's Black Rod. I remember once when he went in, Dennis Skinner shouted out, "Here comes Puss in Boots." Oh, this is the omission of the fox hunting bill.
What's controversial or downright dodgy in this speech, according to some?
There was no mention of fox hunting, which Jonathan just said. Is that what you were referring to?
That, and indeed the bill on the Euro referendum, there isn't going to be one.
No.
Lord's reform, hereditary peers abolished before the new system is in fact agreed.
She must be fed up of reading this stuff out year in and year out.
No, she's above these things.
Isn't she tempted to read it out in a funny voice? Or maybe she's been doing that for 40 years.
Yeah, what's her real voice like then?
We're going to get rid of fax hunting. It's going to be no more fax hunting. It's going to be... Tap of fees over here, a tap of fees, and that's a man, a tap of fees over there.
Well, she had some pretty terrible jargon this year.
Yeah.
My government will be up front on same-sex couples, civil partnerships and things like this. It was...
You can imagine her and the Duke of Edinburgh
I
approving
know.
of that over dinner, can't you?
I know, over the Tupperware, they don't mention these sort of things. Breakfast time and everything.
No, he says things to her like, "Yo, you look buff, Your Majesty." She says, "What's up, big man?" That's the sort of jargon they get up to at home. But when they go to Parliament, they use all this ridiculous sort of low-grade management speak. It must really hurt for them.
This is the Queen's speech at the state opening of Parliament. Reform will continue on the House of Lords, which the government regards as outdated and irrelevant. A view confirmed when one confused elderly member turned up for the state opening a day early. And so it's on now to round two, a tabloid buzzer round this week. So let's go with who mistakenly claimed to have met Mr. Bean this week. Paul and Jonathan.
That was an episode of The Simpsons. Tony Blair greets the Simpsons as they arrive at Heathrow. He says, "Welcome to Britain, you know, you know, it's a lovely country," and he dashes off, and Homer says, "Wow, I can't believe it, I've met Mr. Bean."
What was the other thing that he might have been doing in mid-April when he recorded this?
There was a war going on, wasn't there?
Yes, that's right.
That's it.
But luckily he had time out to make a cartoon.
Neville Chamberlain said we are at war with Germany via a glove puppet. What's that, Susie? No assurances have been given.
In the episode, Homer, Marge, Bart and Lisa all end up in Buckingham Palace, which leads to a disastrous meeting between the hilarious dysfunctional family and the Simpsons. Next. What can this fish do that other fish can't? Paul and Jonathan.
It glows in the dark.
It glows in ultraviolet light. It's the world's first GM pet.
What are they called? Glowfish?
Do you think you'd missed a career in sort of product naming? Because you certainly missed a career in a lot of other things. I think if you had been a namer of fluorescent fish, your fall from grace might have not been quite so meteoric. I mean,
This could have far-reaching consequences. Already they've had to make a few cuts to the script for Finding Nemo 2, which now reads, "Oh, there he is."
You haven't seen the film, have you? He's in an aquarium in Sydney.
this really bothers you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just hate this misrepresentation of poor old Nemo.
We'll crack on, shall we?
Yeah.
What is Finding Nemo all about, then? Is it in the title?
Finding this fish. But it's not as easy as Kirsty made out, which is just annoying when the questioner knows nothing about the question. They're supposedly a newsreader.
Yeah.
No, that's ridiculous.
Bring on the autocue. Finding Nemo.
As revealed in the papers this week, who has recently found themselves speaking in a mixture of estuary English? Ian and Will.
Yeah, this is a woman in the States who's had a bizarre neurological phenomenon where, I don't know whether she had a blow on the head or something, but she came to and found herself speaking in an English accent. whereupon she was ostracised, apparently ostracised by all her neighbours and friends. And I find this most bizarre. Normally, one's English accent goes down extremely well in the States.
But
Rather like the movies of Richard Curtis. Where everybody talks like this, and Americans just lap it up. And it's sort of like Hugh Grant, you have the floppy fringe, and everybody goes...
Have you reviewed the film? I haven't seen it. Have you reviewed it?
Yeah, I did.
Did you hate it?
Hatred, I would say that hatred would be a very weak word to describe it. I thought to use, for anybody who hasn't seen it, let me just completely ruin the film, to use over the opening credit sequence Hugh Grant saying that there was a lot of love around in the world, and you could really know this because when they played transcripts of the last phone calls of the people on the flights that flew into the two towers, they were all speaking lovely things to their loved ones, is the most grotesque and sick manipulation of a cinema audience's feelings that I've ever seen since Lenny von Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will. I mean, it was a really grotesque exercise.
all that bit in Finding Nemo.
Her name was Tiffany Roberts, and what she had is known as foreign accent syndrome. According to...
Naming that,
Yes.
And I know all about fallen accent syndrome. I mean, in order to communicate inside prison, I had to have a completely new vocabulary with all kinds of completely new words.
Is it time to slop out? Who takes this away?
I remember the first thing I was ever advised to do was take the cucumbers, and I couldn't understand what this meant.
I feel uncomfortable, really.
Cucumbers equals numbers. Numbers equals Rule 43. Rule 43 is a rule which says any prisoner can be taken into solitary confinement in a vulnerable prisoners unit for his own protection. And that's, of course, what convicted prison officers usually do. And my informant, who kept saying to me, take the cucumbers, mate, take the cucumbers, he thought any passing cabinet minister would be very wise to take the same precautions. But I didn't understand him, so I just went off to an ordinary wing.
Is there a Cockney rhyming slang for massive Saudi arms deal?
Next up, who has been reading David Beckham's mail recently?
Well, it's not David, obviously. Is it an undercover journalist pretending to be a Spanish bullfighter who's infiltrated the Beckham's house and revealed that their Tupperware is made of gold?
You really don't know, do you?
People have been writing to them via Beckenham Palace, and it's been sent to the Queen.
God, he knows everything.
I knew I was coming onto a news quiz, so I read the papers, damn you!
Unfortunately, unlike you, Ian and I have had to write them this week. But
Finally, then, who has been declared an unlikely sex god this week?
Ian
Do you know it, or...
Ian, you are a sex god.
Yes, thank you, Will.
you.
Unfortunately, that's the wrong answer.
Well, no, it is
It's
right,
not
obviously.
technically,
But...
it's the right answer.
I think Ian's a sex god. Everybody put your hand up who thinks Ian's a sex god.
I think that could
Isn't
broadly
it amazing when a whole bunch of people take the piss all together? Isn't that a wonderful sight? That's what we British are good at.
Is this the world's sexiest man, according to some magazine?
Yeah, it's according to
Yeah,
the
it's
Erotic Review.
Gordon Brown.
Not Gordon Brown.
Gordon Brown it is, yes.
Yeah, see.
Come on now.
Yeah.
You see, they groaned for Gordon Brown, they applauded for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, but they groan for Gordon Brown.
The odd one out round is next, Ian and Will. Your four are Margaret Hodge,
Hodgie.
Jeffrey Archer,
Archie.
Neil Hamilton,
Hemmy.
and Jonathan Aitken.
Achy.
I would guess this is a question about fighting libel actions. Margaret Hodge, I believe, is the odd one out because she didn't actually fight the action. Jeffrey Archer said he would give up his job as vice-chairman of the Tory party rather than amusing me. And he would fight the action. Then Neil Hamilton gave up his job as a backbencher who asked questions for money. So he had to give that up for a bit. and Jonathan Aitken, who rather famously did that rather embarrassing number about the simple sword of truth and how you were going to stamp out the bent and twisted cancer of British journalism. I mean, I didn't take it personally. Though I have brought with me... This was your bankruptcy, which we were one of your principal creditors, because we called you a liar, you probably remember, and you sued us, and then amusingly you went to jail for perjury. I don't want to rake all this stuff up. It's,
Go on.
it's just that you owed us £28,000 in, you know, legal costs. Obviously, we'd wasted all that money trying to prove something that was true. We only got back 50p in the pound. I mean, I don't want to make a big deal of it, but it's £13,702 you owe me.
Good, sorry about that.
You see, you have been studying. Your soft answer has turned away a flock of wrath.
Explain more, if you would, about Margaret Hodge. Who was going to sue her?
Margaret Hodge has been made Minister for Children after overseeing an appalling paedophile scandal when she was in charge of Islington Council. It's sort of one of those blairy moves that you'd think, who shall we appoint to be Minister of Children? Let's get someone who was tied up in a paedophile scandal. That'll be good.
Her lawyer, she apologised in court. She agreed to pay £10,000.
One of the people who were involved, one of the boys, or now men, who were sexually abused, said, I think this is really shocking and I'm really appalled by it. And Margaret Hodge sent a letter to the BBC saying, privately, don't listen to him, he's seriously disturbed.
Yes, that's right.
And the BBC went public with it, which was rather brave of them. And then this bloke said, I would like an apology, because I'm not extremely disturbed. I should be, given my background. But actually, I've turned out OK, and I'm not bonkers. And Mrs. Hodge, rather than take him to court or fight the action, caved in and paid up, because she wanted to hold on to a job, which, at the time of recording, she's still doing.
We've missed out the Hamiltons, of course. Anyone know what the Hamiltons have been up to lately? This.
The ultimate cheese party. 3 CDs of the biggest party anthems ever. 50 tunes guaranteed to get any party rocking, no matter who's been invited. Get in the mood for the party season with the ultimate cheese party. It's out now.
So just let me get this straight.
What is a cheese party?
This
is a whole phenomenon I've completely missed.
It's a party where a lot of people go around to each other's houses and get incredibly intoxicated on cheese. They get completely off their trolleys, sniffing cheese, eating it, all sorts of behaviour like that, spreading on each other's bodies. Have you never been to one?
No. I want to go.
No, I mean...
Will they be there?
We've often thought of asking you, but you're just a bit straight, you know.
Listen, give me a little slab of Edam and I'll show you another side of me.
Yes, you're quite right. The answer is they all resigned their jobs, with the exception of Margaret Hodge, who hasn't yet. The Hamiltons recently opened the world's largest festival of erotica in London.
Oh, really?
That's not
Well,
her,
Christine's
is it?
looking good these days, isn't she?
There's a circle of hell resigned just for them.
Yes,
isn't there?
I can see it from here.
Paul and Jonathan, your 4 are the Queen Mother, Jamie Oliver, Richard Desmond, and Bingo from the Banana Splits.
Is Bingo the only one that's come third in a Janet Street Porter lookalike competition?
Only one of them's a pornographer.
Is not the answer.
It's true, though.
Only the Queen Mother has not received an honour.
What did Bingo get?
Bingo is Knight Commander of the British Empire.
There's a bit of a clue in the Jamie Oliver photograph. What's he holding?
Drumsticks.
Drumming.
Drumming.
Bingo
Bingo
was the
was a drummer,
Yeah,
and Richard Desmond was a
drummers.
drummer. The Queen Mother was never a drummer, so she's the odd one out.
Sort of. The answer is that they all played the drums except for the Queen Mother, who
Yeah.
couldn't play a full kit but was apparently an expert on the bongos.
You're making it up.
I am not.
You're
So late
making
nights
it
at
up.
Clarence.
Would
Late
I?
nights at Clarence House, one footman saying to the other, she's been on the gin again as they hear. If the Queen Mother played the bongos, we would have heard about it by now.
Yeah.
What other instrument could the Queen Mother play?
Spoons.
The
Those are the glasses, I'm miming there, in case you're wondering what's going on.
It's the harmonica. Her mother taught her to play the harmonica.
Lies, lies,
All true.
lies.
That wonderful combination that you don't often hear enough, harmonica and bongos together.
Have any of you seen the latest Jamie Oliver merchandise recently?
No.
Jamie Oliver's buttocks are impressed into clay, and out of that mould a salad bowl is made.
No, it's not that. Let's see the latest Jamie Oliver merchandise.
I was close. I was close.
What on earth?
He's clearly just circumcised himself. Very neat, there. Very neat job.
You don't need to say anything about that, do you? Nice top.
According to The Guardian, Richard Desmond is an unorthodox businessman who often takes duck hooters into meetings. Duck hooters, incidentally, are decoy whistles used by hunters and not the title of his latest magazine. So, as we head towards the final round, the scores are looking like this. Ian and Will have 7, Paul and Jonathan have 16. Right, Missing Words is the final round, featuring this week's guest publication, The Sword magazine. So let's go with Turkey gave birth to what?
Bernard Matthews.
English.
English language is the answer.
It's not that new a theory. I mean, recently I've been reading a book by Dr. Colin Renfrew that was written in '87 when he proposed this theory, so it's not really new. Sorry, this is my field, really.
Thank God something is. A new theory of how to...
Yes.
Was it a joke?
From the woman who didn't know the plot of Finding Nemo.
Ian, leave it, it's not worth it.
Next, Judge John Deed keeps what?
Keeps a sharp épée.
Isn't he a fictional character?
But this is just a game and it's a headline.
I hate to tell you this, but you're actually a fictional character, and you're shortly going to be written out.
Next week, this will be Nemo sitting over there. Judge John Deed keeps the Queen Mother's bongos wrapped in ceremonial polystyrene.
Keeps fit by fencing is the answer. Next, Sophie, she looks like what?
Prince Andrew. Oops. Johnny Wilkinson.
Her father.
Prince Andrew.
Is that worth a headline? Yeah.
Well,
in the newspaper?
Pork.
The child looks like parent, world exclusive. I suppose in the royal family it is a bit of an exclusive, isn't it?
And finally, it's because of swords that we what?
Invented kebabs. We mount horses on the right, somebody was telling me the other day.
We
You're in the right
right.
direction.
It's because of swords that we drive on the right.
Yeah,
We drive on the left.
yeah.
Oh, do we?
It's because...
Actually, I'm sorry.
That explains all that traffic.
That brings us to the end of tonight's contest, and the final scores are Ian and Will 8, Paul and Jonathan 17. And I leave you with the news that outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, an overexcited President Bush buys one too many I Love London balloons. In the Lake District, soup of the day is prepared at the Beatrix Potter snack bar. And an incriminating photo from Tony Blair's gap year sheds new light on his fondness for Europe. Good night.
Tomorrow night, see this show uncut. Yes, the bits we couldn't show now. That's at 10:30 Saturday night over on BBC Two. Back to Friday night, and we've got Jonathan Ross at 10:35, and he's here to tell you whose his guests are in just a sec.